the government making a rule on this sort of helps parents.
What is that going to do to, freedom of speech or ostensible freedom of speech on TikTok?
It's always difficult when you've come from the detail, you've been used to doing your own work.
Like how you communicate that, is the detail right? Is the detail wrong? Do we need to be focusing on the detail? Do we not?
Agile is not a planning methodology. Waterfall isn't a planning methodology.
It's not. It's Apple.
Hang on, you didn't give me.
Sorry.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the CTO Lens. This is episode 7 with Sophie and I.
Hello.
How's your week been, Sophie? What's been happening in your world?
It's a good. I've had a pretty quiet week, actually. I think it's been quiet, but one of those weirdly quiet, very busy, where you're doing lots of things, but then they all sort of melt into the background. So I unfortunately don't have anything exciting to report for this week, which is wildly disappointing. David, how's your week been? You've been a busy bee as well, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, I mean, it was the start, for those who are paying attention, of the mega diet. So, I'm not sure how grumpy I've been on my professional calls and meetings this week, but that's gone according to plan, and I've abstained from almost every enjoyable aspect of life. I'm probably going to get the worst of me today, Sophie. But there you go.
Oh, are you feeling better for it though? That's the most important thing. I don't know how long it takes to start feeling a little bit sort of more of a spring in your step.
From the alcohol point of view, the lack of alcohol, you do just sleep a bit better, right? I mean, I sleep pretty well anyway, but you do just sleep a bit better, and you go, cause and effect, all that kind of stuff. I'm one of these people. My wife weighs herself every day, if not every 5 minutes. I'm one of these people who weighs myself once a week, and tomorrow is my official weight. So I don't know whether I've done well or lost any weight or whatever. But I just feel better being on a diet. For so long, I've just kind of, I know it sounds a weird thing, but I got to the point where I was uncomfortable and I just enough now. I need to feel a bit healthier, a bit cleaner and all that kind of stuff. So from that point of view, definitely feeling a little bit better.
Awesome.
In terms of professional life, I continue my journeys back and forth from Ireland, where I'm interim CIOing for a lovely company called Water Wipes. Really enjoying that. Some really good people there. I love a factory, as we know. And I think that's going well. And I've switched now since before Christmas. I was sort of every week. Now I'm every other week. So that's just taken the pressure off a little bit physically. I also find I get more done. So again, we're back to this hybrid working thing. It's like when I'm in the office, I can be in the office, I can be with people, talk to people, do all of that people stuff. But then when I'm sitting here in my cozy little, home office, I sometimes I just get through stuff, right? A little bit more effectively. So, I like the balance. I think it works pretty well. There's quite a lot going on in my NHS world at the minute. There's quite a lot going on in the NHS, full stop, right? And so that's an area of focus and interest. I read today, this is a stat that always appalls me, for the east of England in particular, the children waiting for an NDS assessment, so a neurodiversity type assessment, is sitting above 10,000 waiting for an assessment. The good news is there's some good news in there, if we're to believe the statistics, that it's sort of peaked and it's now leveling out. So I think some of the NHS's sort of promotion and rhetoric and the government's rhetoric around that, saying, look, not every child needs an NDS statement, sort of thing. It's like, let's just dial back on that. Let's be a bit sensible. There's some more education come out about, neurodiversity being acceptable to a certain extent. So it's good to hear that we've peaked, but there's still a lot of people who presumably do need some kind of support or help who need that diagnosis. So, there's some pressure in the NHS.
Yeah. No, that's great. And I mean, health is something that you and I have in common, but I think everyone listening to this podcast has in common an interest in technology. And that's certainly an area where technology can help to, support people, as you say, while they're on a waiting list, so that they don't feel like they're waiting for something to happen. Something can happen while they're waiting for the other something to happen. And also to increase the efficiency of providing the assessment. So it's, it's a fun time to be in health tech.
And in a minute we'll pick up, when we do our news review, we'll pick up on the social media ban for under 16s, because that could directly link to some
Mm.
of those health challenges we're talking about. But first of all, let's just tell our lovely audience about a few things that are coming up. We've got some London Tech Leaders events coming up. So on the 26th of February, there's an executive dinner discussing how will AI impact SRE and DevOps roles in the next 5 years. So if that's your thing, and you want to know about that, and you've got an organization who's focused in that SRE and DevOps world, that might be for you. Get in touch. On the 5th of March, we have our fabulous and continuing to grow Women Tech Leaders, number 4. Using culture as a leadership tool is their theme for that event. I think that'll be a really good one. And then on the 25th of March, we've got the first full London Tech Leaders event of the year, which is the Evolving CTO Mandate. That's London Tech Leaders number 23. We've had some discussions about the CTO role and the various other CIO roles, both on this podcast and previously at London Tech Leaders events. So I think, the evolving thing is it keeps evolving, right? So worth tuning in for that one and going along. Get in contact via all the normal channels if you're interested in going to any of those events. Right, onwards. Technology. What's been happening in the news? Like I was just saying, the social media ban. So Australia led. Are we all now following? What do we think about this?
Oh, I think it's really interesting. I mean, obviously, the reception in Australia has been extremely mixed in terms of, I think a lot of under 16s really don't like feeling that there's, technology, which, yes, it can be incredibly harmful. There are also positive opportunities that come out of it. So I think, for me, whenever we're talking about regulating technologies in this way, the challenge is always to maximize the benefits, like access to community, particularly for underrepresented or underserved populations like trans youth, for example, who are having a difficult time anyway, but politically it's a challenge. With, of course, the risks, as you say, around, bullying and mental health. And while there's a lot of support around mental health, and I do think, as we touched on earlier, this increasing or previously increasing, now stabilizing waiting lists for neurodevelopmental services, a lot of that will be from increasing awareness through social media platforms of, okay, well, actually, I show these behaviors. Maybe there's something behind it. Maybe there's some support I can have for my needs. At the same time, there's a lot of really, really underqualified TikTok doctors that are not going to be supporting anyone with their mental health or health more broadly. So I think it's a challenge. I think the positive thing is that we've seen DSET, which is the Department for Science and Information Technology, is that Science, Innovation and Technology. They will be seeking views from the public as as this is debated. Will it happen? Won't it happen? What form is it going to take? But I think it's a really difficult thing to get right. I mean, you have kids, I'm right in saying, David, are they at this sort of age where they've experienced social media growing up?
Yeah, and it's a difficult one. So they're adults now, young adults, 28 and 24. So
Mhm.
they're beyond my influence in terms of what they do with their phones. But apart from, I still pay for my son's phone, so I guess I could cut it off. But anyway, but growing up, there was they did use it. We were into the parent peer pressure, or the peer pressure from them, but the parents get about, everybody else has got it. Everybody, how do I communicate with my friends if they're on there? And you compromise because you're like, I don't want you wandering around town at 9 o'clock at night in the dark. So you go, but you can talk to your friends via social media, right? I don't know. There's
Yeah.
a lot of pressure there to give in. There was a mum on BBC News on the couch yesterday morning talking about this, and she said that she was being pretty hard line about it, and she knew that was making her unpopular with her children now, but she was banking on it making dividends later, paying
Mm.
dividends later, right? So she's sort of taking her own personal crusade. But she said something, and I thought about this. I thought this shouldn't be true, but probably actually is in many things. The government making a rule on this sort of helps parents, because at the minute parents don't have an answer to their kids, especially when they turn up and go, oh, well, Sarah down the road's got it, and I won't be included in the group if I don't, blah blah.
Mm.
So parents just like, no, well, I haven't really got a good reason not to, other than I think it might be bad. If the government says it's bad, they're not allowed to do it. Parents suddenly get to hide behind that a bit, and
Mm.
that may seem like weak parenting, but actually there's a lot of weak parenting going around in the world because of pressures of children, and you want to give them the best and stuff. So I think that actually that helps. I think having a government make a stand helps the parents have a reason for doing what they actually believe is the right thing anyway. So that's an
Yeah.
interesting sort of quirk on it, I think.
It is, it is. And I wouldn't say, I mean, I'm completely unqualified because I have 0 children, but to me, it doesn't come across as weak parenting. You know, no, it will never be the case that every parent does everything the same as every other parent. So the example you gave, which is, well, we do this, but the Joneses do that. It's so difficult to explain that away to a young person who they're not kind of fully developed in their
Mm,
ability to understand, different perspectives and how experience inform perspectives and cultural changes across different families with different histories. To be able to say, well, actually, the government says it's bad is much simpler, and I think I completely agree with you that it will really, really support parents to,
yeah.
feel that they've got their back supported by the government in this.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I think so. That said, American parents
Mm.
are not necessarily being helped by the fact that
Yeah.
TikTok, which was sort of on the ropes in America 18 months ago, seems to have now found its way. It went a bit quiet, but it seems to have found its way to a deal for America. And I'm trying
Yeah.
to sort of understand what's behind this deal. I didn't
So
really understand what it was. Did you? Other than Larry Ellison, because he needs to
yeah.
put more fingers of his in more pies, seems
Yeah.
to suddenly have got Oracle involved, right?
So my understanding of this is that TikTok, you've basically now got a sort of a majority American board now owns and operates a separate entity that has a controlling stake in TikTok in the US. So it's
Right.
basically about following the chain up and what is the sort of national identity of the majority ownership of TikTok in the US. It's American. Obviously, a part of that is Larry Ellison, who runs Oracle, is heading up data and security. Obviously, in and of itself, there has been a bit of response to that, given Oracle's reputation around data and security.
Mm,
I think for me, the major thing that's coming out of this is concerns about that American ownership, and it's not just American ownership; it's sort of Trump-aligned American ownership to a large extent. What is that going to do to freedom of speech or ostensible freedom of speech on TikTok? And you do start to think, people bring back horror stories of things like Cambridge Analytica, where you've got massive, massive influence through these social media platforms. Obviously, America is fairly unstable politically at the moment. So I think a lot of people, I've heard stories of people who, the second they saw that new terms and conditions come in, they deleted the app. They're just
right.
sort of divesting entirely from TikTok because of political
Using that
concerns around
almost as an
this.
opportunity to do so, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's still 19% or 19.9% owned by ByteDance, the
Hmm.
Chinese owner. So, there's a bit of me going, weren't we worried about it being owned by China? And now it's only 20% owned by, yeah, not sure, sort of thing, not sure, but we'll see. I mean, we seem to have some that are sort of vaguely related here this week. So as well as the social media, that other parental sort of stress bucket of games, right? The gaming industry. Now, I mean, I don't know about you, but I might occasionally play a game. I'm more in the sort of Mario Kart's Harry Potter Lego world than I am in the shoot 'em up and kill people world. But yeah, a lot of people play games. A lot of people like it, but we know there's a lot of people sort of obsessed with it. I thought this was a growth industry. In fact, I know new games companies, game studios have been set up, but Ubisoft, who are have been around for a long time, and they one of their big ones was the Prince of Persia. They've made several of those. It looks like they might be cancelling their games, right? It looks not shutting
Mm.
quite as a studio, but it looks like they're cancelling 6 of their games, and it just made me think, what is going on here? And the firm's shares plunged by 33% last week as a result of this announcement. What is happening? Is it just competition? Is it that people are moving away from gaming? Do you think?
Yeah, something that stood out to me reading a little bit around this was the company themselves. They cited rising development costs, and so it seems to be more of a consolidation piece around how they can put more eggs in the kind of the big blockbuster games, and we'll make one of them, and the returns are going to be massive, rather
Right.
than spreading their bets. I'm interested to know where those rising development costs have come from, and there's something I haven't been able to trace down yet. And I do
Right.
wonder whether how and where is AI coming into this? Are we missing an opportunity to, leverage AI in developing these games? Or are we already leveraging AI in developing these games? And that's where the extra cost is coming from. So this is something I'm looking forward to finding out a little bit more about, kind of where this increase in technology development cost is coming from, because typically what we see with increasing time, we see reduction in development
Right.
costs. So I'm interested to see what's actually going on there. If you work in the gaming industry, drop us a message.
Yeah, let us know what's going on there, because I think it's growth, growth, growth. But maybe it's
Mm,
not. Maybe. I mean, I don't want to cast aspersions on Ubisoft, but maybe they haven't embraced some of the newer technologies and AI and auto generation
mm.
stuff that some of the other game studios have. So maybe it's a case of just falling behind a little bit. We'll see. Anyway, they're still there. Hopefully, they'll bounce back. I'm sure lots of people like their games. Um, what else should we talk about? What's your favorite search engine, Sophie? This is a loaded question.
Oh, that's what I'm still using Bing. No, I'm kidding. I mean, so obviously, I think what you're hinting at is Google is now appealing their sort of, absolutely landmark antitrust verdict over having a search monopoly. I mean, this is a few years in the making. This whole thing started in about, I think, 2020. Have you been sort of following as this has been unfolding?
I mean, I thought, no, I was surprised to see this story because actually I thought this was dealt with a few years ago, right? So I'm surprised to see it coming
Yeah.
back. I didn't know it was still a thing.
Yeah, so let's recap the timeline for listeners who haven't been tracking it. And I admit I've only kind of become aware of it in recent years. So it was 2020 when the US Department of Justice initially filed the antitrust lawsuit, and they were accusing Google of ultimately unlawfully monopolizing the online search market.
Right,
And so the trial was spread, I think, across, end of 2023, beginning of 2024. And it was August 2024 that the judge ruled that it was unlawful monopolization. And it was only September last year that we found out what the remedies were going to be.
right,
And so that was, Google was banned from having sort of exclusive deals that would make sort of Google search the default on browsers and devices. So, when you sort of, I'm on Mac and have been for a little while, but I think it's maybe still true that if you buy a sort of Microsoft computer, you get, what's it called? Microsoft Edge. They sort of updated the
Edge,
name, but
Edge,
you get,
yeah.
yeah, you get your sort of default one. So they weren't allowed to do that anymore. And they also would have to share certain user interaction data. So data from which you can extract
I remember.
insights that would support kind of, competitive ability in the search market with certain competitors. But they weren't forced to sell the Chrome browser or the Android OS. And what Google has done now is they are appealing against the ruling and they're appealing against the remedy. My favorite quote from this was uh, Google stated that the court's August 2024 ruling, so that was independent of the remedies, but just about it being unlawful, ignored the reality that people use Google because they want to, not because they're forced to. I'm interested in whether we think that's true. Do you have a perspective on this? Do you use Google? Do you use it because you want to?
Uh, uh, mm, I use it. I use it because it's there and it works.
Yes, I completely agree with you. 100%. And so,
It's like asking me what my favorite hammer is. It's the one
yeah,
that's within reach and hits the nails.
yeah,
Right? That's my
yeah.
favorite hammer. I mean, occasionally I'll choose one hammer over another depending on its, the rubberiness of its handle or something. But no, yeah, I don't believe that. And we don't want to become libelous on here, but I think they're reaching with that. I think they have, positioned themselves well in the marketplace. I don't necessarily think they should be penalized for that, I have to say, right? I believe in,
Mm,
capitalism and all that kind of stuff. So I basically think if they have invested money, time, created a fantastic product, etc., and they're better than everybody else, well, that's tough for everybody else, right? That's my view. But uh,
mhm, mhm. I think what's interesting to me about this, and I don't really care yet at the moment that
yeah,
much about which search engine I use, and there's probably all kind of nefarious things happening in the background, and we do hear stories of Meta shared pixels, and so they
yeah,
sort of companies know things about your health that they shouldn't know. Like I think there are some situations where we do get concerned, and I think what will be interesting with this case is seeing how it unfolds and what that unfolding has to say about antitrust in general with big tech organizations, because I think people don't hate Google as much as some people hate Amazon, for example.
yeah,
And so I think, what it says about our ability as a sort of global society to regulate big tech when we feel like it's doing things we don't really want it to do, I think that will be more what's taken away
yeah,
from this.
yeah. I think it's easy to hate big tech. I think it's easy
Yeah.
to focus on things like, and we touched on this last week, when Facebook or Instagram or whatever isn't doing enough to prevent, you know, uh, copycat teenage suicides, right?
Yeah.
And that content being out there, right? It's easy for everybody to go, that's wrong. They should be dealing with that, etc., right? But that's such a small percentage. And then actually, don't we just hate them because they're really, really good at what they do and they've made lots and lots of money out of it?
Probably to an extent. Yeah. And it's easy to hold, these big organizations to a standard
Yeah,
that is, how possible is it to achieve? It's very difficult to kind of know how to feel about this, I think.
it is. It is. Okay, well, listen, that was a quick one through what's happening in the news this week. Some of it quite related, all seem to be around, people using the internet and the evils of. I don't know. Sometimes I think, oh, when did that become our lives? When did should we go back 30 years and we won't have any of these mobile phones and any of that? But I've made a lot of money out of the internet, so I'm not going to make it. Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. So what shall we discuss this week? We've got a topic that I think we've all discussed in the past, which is whether to sweat the small stuff versus the devil's in the detail. So, this is particularly important for our audience, for leaders or people, stepping into their first leadership roles. It's always difficult when you've come from the detail, you've been used to doing your own work or working within a team where you're all sort of doing the detail together, and then the big boss sticks their head in and goes, "How's it going?" And there's a bit of like, "Oh, how do I answer that question? What do they want to know?" Something. And I've been on 2 calls today already where one of them was one of the people on the call, a project manager, very capable across their work, just wants to tell you everything, right? Just
Mm.
really like, you're getting the JIRA numbers, you're getting all of the detail and stuff, and you sort of want to lean in and go, right, this is their work, this is what they do, and I need to pay attention here. They're trying to communicate something to you, and then halfway through, you're just like, can you dumb that down for me? I haven't worked out whether I'm worried yet or not, sort of thing. And then that feels like you're not paying attention to the quality of their work. But there's something in you that says, I don't need to know this yet, right? I
Mhm.
just need to know, whether I've got to worry, whether I've got to change something, whether I've got to put more money, more people, but whatever sort of thing. And then there's other times, and this was my second meeting. So again, 2 parallel opposites. My second meeting of the day was, I was with a bunch of, let's call them business people rather than specifically technology people. And there's a piece of software system that we need to make some changes to. And, we've been trying to get them to engage with us on this. And, they're saying all the right things. But there's some hierarchy in their organization, which means that we sort of got pushed off to their teams. We did all the diligent work. One of my guys went around, talked to everybody, gathered all the cards. We've come back, and now we're being told, yeah, no, that's not right. And it's like, but your team's told us that,
Oh.
right? This is what, we went into the detail with your team, and now you're telling us this is not right. And they're like, yeah, strategically it's not right. So you're then like, okay, so let's come back up a level. So let's come out to the detail, and that hurts as well. That's sort of a like, okay, but we were down in the detail because nobody had the detail, and now we've got the detail. You tell us the detail's wrong, and we need to look at the bigger picture, something. So that's a slight different version of sweating the small stuff versus the devil's in the detail. But
Mm.
what I can tell you there from a leadership perspective is that we'd gone into the detail, not necessarily me, but my guys had gone into the detail, but we hadn't got buy-in on the bigger picture, right?
Mm.
And so that was
Mhm.
that was really, it's not so much don't sweat the small stuff versus devils. It's more like, break it up into chunks, get buy-in on things, and then you will get to the detail at some point, right? So I think that's one of the areas. But it's so easy as a leader to misjudge when you should be in the detail and when you shouldn't be in the detail. What's your experiences there, Sophie?
Yeah, it is. It's really interesting. The thing that comes to mind, I remember having a conversation with a chief product officer at I can't remember which company it was, but a leading women's health company, and she had many different product squads and quite a well built out sort of technology organization. And she said, "Well, I don't have time to go into the detail." She would habitually listen into customer interviews just to that's a sort of separate thing, but staying in touch with
Yeah,
the
cool.
customer needs, very very important. And she said, I wait till something goes wrong, and that's when I go in and I am fully ready to, roll up my jeans and roll up my sleeves and wade into the mess and find out what is going wrong. But I wait for that signal. I'm constantly watching sort of the inputs and the outputs, but the bit in the middle, I kind of, I trust them
Right.
until I feel that I need to come in and support it. And I think that to me is such a valuable approach, but I think it only applies when you've got a system that's kind of up, there's an initiative or a project that's kind of running and you can kind of monitor the progress.
Mm,
The other thing that came to mind for me was I remember sitting down with a CEO of a company I worked at. And they said, we're going to do this big project. And we hadn't started. It was an ambition. They said,
right.
we're going to do this big project and we'll do phase A, and phase A will be fantastic. And then we'll do phase B and that will be fantastic. And sort of took me all the way down to phase F, which was, big business success, right? Um, and they were completely detached from the detail, which I think is appropriate often for someone at CEO level, because you can't go into all of the back and forth. But actually, it was a sort of a machine learning AI project. It was a project that was kind of in health. It would require,
Right.
kind of buy-in and collaboration with the NHS. And as this person was going through A, B, C, D, E, etc., I sort of sat there and for me, being connected to the detail went, okay, well, that's not possible. Well, that would require regulation. So that's, 5 years. And well, we actually haven't proven that one and we don't know whether it's possible. And this one's extremely unlikely. And so I think, that was a separation of the detail from the
Mm,
strategy. And yeah, the strategy is great. We obviously want to achieve this thing, but it needed to be validated using the detail.
yeah.
And that can be a really difficult conversation to have because you don't. And I remember speaking to this person, and in my head, I was saying, don't say, I'm going to burst your bubble. Don't say it. Don't say it. And I threw the word bubble in there completely by accident. I went, oh God, I think that was quite rude. And so I think there's a part of how you introduce the detail when the detail is relevant to the strategy, like how you communicate that. Is the detail right? Is the detail wrong? Do we need to be focusing on the detail? Do we not? Often as a leader, you might spot something detailed and think, oh gosh, that's not right. But how do you introduce that in a way that
Mm.
is constructive, both in the moment, you communicate that concern, but it's also constructive in terms of the broader relationships and the culture of the organization? I mean, do you have any sort of success stories or horror stories of how you introduce the detail or how you introduce a concern?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. So, and I guess I practice this a lot, right? And it can be a very individual thing. You sort of have to learn who your audience are and who your peers and stakeholders and all that kind of stuff are, right? And how they operate in different ways. And because if you're not well known, and I'm often brought into a situation which is quite stressful, people looking to scale or turn around a problem or whatever, everybody's got their back up a little bit, right? And then I come along with
Mm,
my nice, happy, smiley face because I'm always happy and smiling, sort of thing. I actually try that. That's a technique to a certain extent, right? It's a like, nobody's died. We can work this out. Let's partner on it together. So sometimes I use term partner's a big term I use a lot of the time, right? Because it shows to people I'm not just going. So what's the answer? Right?
mm,
So why haven't you got this detail? Why haven't you got a strategy? It's about the communication on, and don't get me wrong, I still piss people off occasionally, Sophie, right, sort of thing. But I sometimes state in the bleeding obvious, and it makes them feel like, oh, he's just called me out for not having a plan, or he's just got, and that's never my intention. My intention is always to partner and find a way forward for everybody. And I think that's the ultimate goal. And sometimes you just need to overtly remind people that you're all on the same team and you're trying to get to an answer that works for everybody in the business, right? So sometimes you
yeah,
just need to say that out loud because people start taking sides or putting up barriers and that sort of thing. Um,
yeah,
I think,
yeah,
yeah, you have to be really careful. But I think also there's a time to let people off.
mm,
So what you will find is that generally people want to know the answer to something, and often that requires an amount of detail, right?
mm,
And so if it's clear to you that you've asked a question that somebody doesn't know that amount of detail to, then you need to quickly establish that that's okay and you give them some time to go away and find the answer, right? So
mm,
that when
mm,
that's when you're on the other side of that and you're like, will this person be able to give me the detail? They maybe came into the room not knowing I wanted that level of detail. So you cut them a bit of slack and you go, oh, come back to me. Come back to me. Let me know when you've got that, sort of thing. And you don't make them feel bad for not knowing that level of detail there and then. I mean, the first time, Sophie, right? Once they get to know you, once they get to know the level of detail, and I think that's a really important thing, right? When you're working as a leader with teams, you need to set your stall out. How many times have I said that, right? You need to tell people what level of detail you want. I did one of those psychometric things with all the team and stuff like that. I don't know, I'm blue or green or yellow or red or
mhm,
whatever. Right? I think I used to be red and now I'm a bit more yellow. I think that's the way it works,
uh-huh,
right? But blue, generally, blue, see, I've got my little blue here, right? Blue is likes detail, right?
mm,
That's what I recall. Likes data, likes detail, likes. Now, I think I do. I work in computers. I work with spreadsheets. I work with budgets. I do like to have control, but
Mhm.
actually, I'm much more. Tell me a story. Yeah,
Mm.
let me feel my way through this with you, sort of thing, right? Tell me what your gut is. Tell me what you think. So actually, there can be detail in there, but I'm a bigger picture kind of. Don't go into too much low level detail. Just give me the gist, and we'll work through this together. Which you will say probably in a product world sometimes just is too nebulous, right? Might be okay at the innovation sort of ideation start, but then you've got a developer going, is it a blue button or is it a red button? Which is
Yeah.
it? Sort of thing. So
Well,
that's work for
this is
everyone.
yeah, definitely. And this is the thing that really interests me because I think I'm quite blue as well. And I'm
Right.
definitely, I'm interested. I have a hunger and an interest and a curiosity about the detail. And so if left unchecked, I will naturally bias towards tell me more, tell me more, tell me more. And then you're right down to, actually looking at the code, which is not something that I need to be
No.
doing, right? Um, and it's completely unhelpful if I do. And so I think this, what we've talked about so far is this question of how do I know when I need to go into the detail and how do I handle it? But I think there's also this trick to, if you are a person who has a natural pull towards the detail, and particularly if you are, kind of moving your career from more on the IC side to more the leadership side, resisting that temptation to say, yeah, tell me more. And picking those moments where you feel yourself reaching out to type a message to say, could you send me the document? And you go, no, that is not the best use of my time. And I think for a lot of people, and certainly for me in the beginning, it was a really manual effort. It was stick a post-it on your wall that says, do you actually need to know that question mark? Underline it and kind of build that muscle. But
Right.
I think that's another important part as well. Sometimes we're tempted to pull into the details, but we have to remind ourselves that is that the best use of our time? Do we feel confident that we can trust our teams to handle it or to come to us and to raise the flag if they feel that they do need our perspective when it comes to the detail?
Yeah, I think you're right. The ability to know when to zoom in, zoom out is important.
Mm.
Generally speaking, the time to zoom in is about 30 seconds before the platform blows up, if you can calculate that, right? That's always a good time to lean in. But sometimes your CEO or whoever you're reporting to up the line, gives you the whole like, oh, so you don't know that then, and you're like,
Mm.
not the level I as a leader operate at, right?
Yeah.
But I know my guys will know this detail. So you have to build that relationship. And sometimes it's telling the people above you that, yeah, I'll never. So if you want those questions, give me a heads up. If you want the answer,
Mm.
give me a heads up. I'll prepare for the meeting, right?
Mm.
And it's just upwards, downwards, sideways. Just deciding who wants what and how much detail you want, and learning that, because I can do detail if I need to. I just don't think it's the best use of my abilities and creativity, right? So I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, learning the difference, learning your stakeholders, learning who wants to hear what, learning when to stop with the level of detail, which is what you were just saying. You could go on and on and on. Yeah, it's a challenging one, but one that you just have to kind of work your way through.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, listen, we had a little dive into some detail around, whether you should be in the detail or not. I think, we probably leave our listeners with the advice of you need to be able to stay at different levels depending on the stakeholder group and the conversation. So hopefully that's a takeaway for those. Anybody else who's got any thoughts or interest on that, by all means, post on our LinkedIn page or send us a comment or something like that. We know that everybody will have different experiences in all of these different areas.
And now I think it might be time for the mid-episode game. And we actually have our normal game elf. Luke is not here today, but I think Will is going to join us to do a little bit of gaming. Will, are you there?
Hey,
Yeah.
Will. So, you've joined us this week because Luke is what, skiing or just hungover again or what?
Yes, that could be typical Luke, but no, he's actually in Manchester, I believe. He went up there to
Manchester.
see a couple of friends do high rocks.
Oh, yeah. He told us about that, Mr. Fitness himself. So that's good. But
Yeah.
listen, we've got you, Phil, and I'm sure Phil. Phil? I don't know who we've got. Like, this bloke on the corner here, sort of thing. So that's one for the
Yes.
outtakes. And we've got you, Will, and I dare say you've got a fun mid-episode quiz for us to go through.
Yeah, so thanks both. So good to see you both. So today we're going to play a game called
Tech to the Top.
So today we're playing a game called Tech to the Top. It's a little spin on Radio 2's 10 to the Top, if anyone has listened to that. Hopefully we don't get done for any copyright. I don't think we will. So as I explained very briefly earlier to you both, there's going to be a set of 6 questions each. Essentially, the points go up incrementally. So if you get a question one right, for example, you get 1 point. If you get question 2 correct, you get 2 points for that question. There's a possible 21 points on offer. So if you get all the questions correct, you get 21 points.
Nice.
If you get a question wrong, points go back down to 1 if you get one wrong. The other thing to mention is if you do get a question wrong, the other person can answer the question for 1 point.
I hope you're not going to test us on the rules at the end of this. I'm just going to answer the questions and rely on you to score, right?
Yeah, I'll be doing the scoring, so don't worry about that so much. But I suppose that the big question really is who wants to go first, because you get to decide which question set you go for. So question set 1 or 2.
David,
Well,
do you want to go?
Sophie's
I
just
won.
trying
I won
to-
last time, I think. So I think it's only fair.
You
No,
did,
she
yeah.
just had to get that in there, Will. She just had to remind people.
I know.
She won last time. I wouldn't be so, unchivalrous as to remind us what the overall score is, right? So,
Yeah. It's very
Wouldn't
close,
dare.
close if I remember rightly. I think it's 3-2. I have to double check that. But yeah, who do you want to go first, David?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, cool. Which question set would you like? Question set 1 or question set 2?
Oh, I'm going to go with question set 2, please.
Okie dokie. Okay, you ready?
Yes, I am.
Here we go. Question 1 for question set 2. What does DNS stand for in internet's terminology?
Domain name service.
I've got
Or
domain name
server.
system. I'll give it to you, that one. It's domain name system I've got. I'll give you that one. Okay, 1 point. Okay, question 2. Who co-founded Microsoft alongside Bill Gates?
Steve Ballmer.
I've got Paul Allen.
It was Paul Allen, but it was also Steve Ballmer. Oh, hang on, was Steve Ballmer
Oh.
Apple? They all blur to me. They're all
We get
very, very rich people who founded massive tech companies a long time ago. I
Let
could
me
just say anybody: Larry Ellison, Steve Ballmer, all out. Yeah, one of them. They all blur into middle-aged, middle-class white men for me.
So you didn't get that one right, David. So question 3 is
I
now
want to
worth.
know who Steve Ballmer is now. It's annoying me. Who's Steve Ballmer? Where did that come from?
Yeah, have a look.
Steve Ballmer.
Steve Ballmer is an investor who was the chief executive officer at Microsoft. Yeah. So
Interesting.
he wasn't the key, obviously wasn't the
Oh.
founder. Like, later on in the journey, I just got that bit wrong. Never mind.
Okay, not to worry. Okay.
Right, go for it.
So question 3 is now worth 1 point again. Which social media platform was originally called Peekaboo? And that's quite a tough one. I'm going to give you a bit of a clue. It's to do with photos.
Instagram.
Not quite. Close. Sophie, any ideas for 1 point?
Can I say Snapchat?
Is correct.
Yes.
Snapchat is correct. Okay, cool. So again, for question 4, David, is worth 1 point. Okay. What is the most popular programming language used to build iOS apps?
I mean, it could be Flutter because it's a cross-platform coding language. It could be. I mean, the old boys will use an equivalent of C#, but then there's something in the middle which I just can't quite bring to the front of my mind at the minute. It will come to me momentarily as soon as we finish this question, which is why I'm stalling. I can't remember.
Okay, is
Let's
that?
say Flutter.
It's not Flutter.
No, of course it's not. What is it?
What? Any ideas, Sophie?
Oh yeah, go on.
I was going to say Flutter, but I'll say C#. Then I'll steal your second.
No, I've got Swift as an answer.
Yeah, it's Swift.
Oh, I was going to say Swift.
C#. That's my point. See?
Yeah.
Oh,
Never
So
mind. Everybody on the people listening to this now are like shouting at the screen, right?
probably.
yeah. I feel like I need a negative point because I've built one app ever and I built it in Swift. So I for me.
Next time, maybe. But yeah, no, it's Swift, unfortunately. But good announcement of the other languages there. So, question 5 is again worth 1 point, David.
I'll do very well with the points.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll top them up in a minute. What is the name of the AI voice assistant built into Google devices? There's a bit of a clue in the question there as well. What is the name of the AI voice assistant built into Google devices?
I thought it was Gemini, but now I'm worried because that's not in the question.
No,
Google Voice Assistant. Is it called Voice Assistant?
I'll give you that. It's Google Assistant.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
All right, fair enough. Thank
This
you.
week you're not doing particularly well.
No, exactly. I need the point. I need the points here.
Yeah, no, it's
Is
fine.
it too late to go to question batch 1?
Do it. Okay, so this is your final question. And because you got the last question correct, this is now worth 2 points. Okay. Question 6, final question.
Yeah.
Which is faster for processing graphics, a GPU or a CPU?
A GPU.
Correct.
Hey,
Good job, David. So that at the end of that round gives you 4 points.
4 points out of a total possible 21. Cooking with
Yeah.
cats.
Exactly. Now,
very nice.
just to note, Sophie did gain an extra point because she got the Snapchat question correct.
Also, hang on. I could win off of her points for a question she can't answer.
Yes, true.
Exactly. So
I'm
you're
gonna
still
pay attention.
viable faster. Yeah, you're still viable to get points, David. So here we go. Are you ready, Sophie?
I am. I'm feeling a little bit nervous, and I now feel very much like a product person on a
4
tech
points,
podcast than a
Sophie,
tech
4
person.
points.
But
Come on.
I only need 3 more, and you can't steal any. So I reckon that's doable.
Exactly.
We'll see. Okay, cool. So question 1 for your round, Sophie, is what does HTTP stand for in a web address?
HTTP. Oh, God, I don't even know this one. HTTP. Can I make a joke out of it? Like His Majesty's something. I don't know. Let's give this one to David. David, what does HTTP stand for?
I believe it stands for Hypertext Transport Protocol.
It's very close. The third word needs changing slightly.
Hypertext Transfer Protocol.
Correct. I'll give you that. Okay. Well done.
Hey!
Okay. So
You know, age is on my side there, Sophie, right? Well, I'm going to tell you. Well, I'm going to interrupt this broadcast and tell you a fascinating fact, which I may have mentioned before.
Go
When
for
I
it, yeah.
worked for BT, I had to register a patent for something I was working on. So I went to the little patent office in BT Labs in Martlesham. There's a guy sitting in there, and it's like a dusty little room, and he had all these boxes around him, and it was like fascinating. And I was like, "So what are all these patents and stuff like that?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, they're all good." I said, "Got any really interesting ones?" And he said, "Yeah, BT 20 years ago patented the hypertext link. So the little link that you all click on." He said they patent. And I went, "Oh my goodness!" He said, "Yeah, we've never enforced the patent. If we enforced the patent, you'd have to shut the internet."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh my goodness, that's amazing!" So there's your little patent, a little bit of
Fascinating.
Good little fact, actually.
Sorry, interrupted. I'm just trying to put
No,
you
it's
off.
great. It's great. I'm hoping the next question is who patented the hyperlink.
Yeah.
That would be helpful. Anyhow, it's not, unfortunately. The next question is, Sophie, who co-founded Google alongside Larry Page?
Oh God, I do know this one. And the name is completely, I can see him. The name has completely gone out of my head. I'll pass it to David.
Any ideas, David?
Oh, what's his name?
It's somebody called Sergey. Sergey. I want to say Brevin, but it's not Brevin. Sergey. Sergey. Yeah, Sergey. That's all I know.
It's so close. Maybe I'll give you half a point because it's Sergey Brin.
Sergey Brin. Brevin Brin. Come on, man. I'm just getting you too much.
Oh, he gets that.
You know.
Oh, if you're happy with that, Sophie, I can give him the point. That's not a problem.
Give him the point. Can I have a point that the picture I had in my mind was the right person? Is that?
Yeah. I mean, why not, Sophie? Take it. We don't know what you had in your mind, but you know.
Yeah. Maybe the brainwaves were going to David. He got it right from that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's 1 point to David. So actually, David, you're doing quite well on this round. So we'll see.
I told you I would.
I know who's going to win this one.
Question.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Here we go. So this is again for 1 point, Sophie. Question 3. Which social media platform was the first to reach 1 billion active users?
Oh, interesting. I mean, the obvious one so Facebook is the big one, but before Facebook, there was MySpace. Did you say 1 million or 1 billion?
1 billion.
1 billion. I think it's got to be Facebook.
You're correct. It is.
Yeah.
It is. Well done.
Point.
Nice.
A point, finally. Yeah, well done. I think we've had that before, actually, appear on the podcast. I'm not sure it was a question, but we definitely mentioned it.
Yeah, we talked about it before, for sure.
Yeah, so well done on that. Okay, question 4 is, who is credited with creating the Java programming language, primarily used for Android apps? So who is credited for creating the Java language?
I don't know this one. David, your point.
It's quite a tough one.
If you're looking for a person, I'm not going to be able to help you. If you're looking for a company, I think it was Oracle.
Yeah, I've unfortunately got the person down for this. And
I'll
that person was,
know the name, but I can't recall it off the top of my head.
yeah, it was a guy called James Gosling, apparently.
Yes, I knew that.
So, so
But did you imagine his face, David? That's the
I
important
think
question.
I've met him. I think I've actually met him.
oh,
Oh,
yeah.
wow.
Oh,
So
maybe we'll
I
keep
can't
him.
imagine his face, but I do think I met him. I think I met him at Oracle in the early 90s, I think.
Genuinely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
I
That's
am that
another.
old, Will, genuinely.
That's cool. That's a good fact. That's a great fact. Okay, cool. So we're back to question. Back to question 5. We're on question 5 now, Sophie. Again, this is worth 1 point. So, which type of computer memory is faster, RAM or ROM?
Oh. RAM.
Correct.
Yes. Knew
Okay.
it.
What do they
1 point.
stand for, Sophie?
So one is random access memory and one is a random access memory.
Read
No, that was
only
it. This is
memory.
a joke. It's a joke. What is it? What is it? What does ROM stand for?
I got it. Was a joke. Read only memory.
It was just a bad joke. Read only memory. Okay, there you go. Wait, did I get the first one right? Is that
You got RAM.
Okay.
So you got one. Yeah. So well done.
read
Yeah. So
only memory?
this is the last question for your round. It's worth 2
Okay.
points. Okay. Which company is generally credited with popularizing solid-state drives in consumer laptops?
Ooh,
And it's probably easier than you think.
yeah. I think I know this.
These
are hard
IBM?
questions for a product person. Come on.
Yeah, this is unfair. Let's do it next week on product stuff. I'm going to say IBM.
Say again, sorry?
IBM?
It's not. It's Apple.
Hang on, you didn't give me.
Sorry.
Oh,
No, David.
But honesty box, I wasn't going to say that. I was going to say SATA, who are a major manufacturer of solid state drives. But
Okay. At least my error wasn't too.
yeah, no, exactly. It didn't impact the scores.
Sorry. Okay, cool. So that was 0 points for that question, unfortunately, Sophie. So you scored 2 points in that round. So okay, so scores on the doors after that game. David has 6 points, and Sophie has 3 points.
well earned. Well earned. That's a fair score.
Sorry.
I will bear this in mind. So if we do a similar sort of round again in the future, perhaps I'll try and do some more product-related questions.
I think you need to
It's
return.
a tech podcast.
No, come on, Sophie. I think tech product. We're all closely combined. If you're expected to operate in my world, I should be able to operate in yours. Come on, we'll see.
Come on,
but wouldn't it be embarrassing if we did one on product and I beat you on that?
Yeah. Maybe let's not do a product one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I believe that means scores on the doors are 4-2 overall in terms of this season. So but I'll double check with that.
All to play for. Thank you,
Exactly.
Will. Thank you very much for being
Will.
Hostmaster extraordinaire this week. You did a cracking job. Luke, you're sacked. So what should we talk about now?
Well, I think we should talk about our disaster diary for this week. So we got a letter in, and I'm really interested in this because, well, I'll tell you why I'm interested in it in just a second. Let me read it out first. So, to David and Sophie, I've been part of Agile teams for years, but lately I'm wondering, is it actually working? We have sprints, we have stand-ups and retros, but we're still struggling to deliver on time. Priorities keep shifting, and team morale feels stuck. I thought Agile was supposed to help us move faster and adapt, but right now it just feels like a lot of meetings and processes with little real progress. My question to the both of you is Agile broken, or have we just lost the way to make it work? I would be interested in both of your thoughts. So the reason I'm really interested to talk about this is that we had an event last year in May, so coming up to a year ago, it's still January. And the topic of that one was actually I think it was, is Agile dead, or maybe something more political. Is Agile still working for us? And I was lucky enough to have a conversation with Giles Lindsay, who obviously really knows what he's talking about when it comes to talking about, Agile and the separation between what we see in the manifesto and what we see people implementing nowadays and what we're actually trying to achieve. So I have a lot of thoughts on this. But I would love to invite you, David, to, kick us off, because you, I imagine, have been working with Agile teams for a little while in a CTO position. I mean, what do you typically see, or what do you typically advise when this question comes up?
Um, I so I actually I wish this particular listener had given us a bit more detail,
Mm,
because, and I'll use one of my favorite phrases, which is "it's horses for courses," right?
hmm
And I don't think it's as simple. So if this particular company is a small, lean company iterating on a digital product, shall we say, then Agile's clearly not working for them, and they need to look at it, because it should be working in that environment. Yeah, if you're taking a
hmm
product to market internally, externally, whatever, and it's largely software based, so it's digital, and rather than lots and lots of robots and infrastructure and heavy lifting machinery and stuff like that, then there isn't really a reason Agile shouldn't work for you. Although you've got lots of companies who do digital products who are much, much bigger. And then they're sort of like they've kind of got modules all over the place and dependencies and stuff. And then Agile gets a bit like, well, we can do Agile, and we can do Agile, and we can do Agile, and we can do Agile. But to pull it all together needs a
mm,
bit more sort of waterfally dependency type management, right? So it depends is my official answer. But I think one of the things that is coming true in what they said is that they're doing all the ceremonies, right? And that's
mm,
that thing that I think we've become a bit obsessed with. I think Agile has got like, oh, we're going to be Agile, right? Let's get some Scrum Masters, and let's have a daily stand up, and let's have a retrospective, and and you're so busy doing all of those ceremonies and following the golden rules of Agile,
hmm
you've actually lost the principle of it, which was to be light of foot and iterate to a positive outcome, right? So I think that's the thing, is people just like get on. I think the final thing I'll say, and then I'll shut up, is people use Agile as an excuse not to plan. Yeah,
mm,
and you know, Agile is not a planning methodology in the same way
mm,
that waterfall isn't a planning methodology. It's a way of mapping out your work in chunks, shall we say, of differing sizes, right? And doing
hmm
dependent. Everybody needs to plan. Everybody needs to plan around everything. So don't be afraid of doing planning, even if you're agile, because if you plan, then you look into the future at something. Now you can then bucket it up in agile sprints if you want to, with themes around 2 or 3 sprints, and suddenly you've got, what's it called, Wagile, where you've got waterfall and agile, right? Sort of thing. But that doesn't matter, right? But the point is that don't excuse yourself from planning, and don't get obsessed with the ceremonies. Is my initial thoughts. What do you think?
hmm hmm I love that your first thought on this was, what is the correct environment for Agile? Because and I'll come on to the second one, which is, are you doing Agile with an uppercase A or a lowercase A?
Right, right,
But I think it's such a good point. I mean, the first health tech company I joined and they said, we're doing Agile, and they had just discovered it and sort of tried it for 6 months, and particularly in a heavily regulated environment where you've got these kind of long development cycles working with the NHS, they typically work very slowly. There is a lot of planning. It's much more suited to have a slightly more waterfall environment. And so there was
right.
6 months of, we've just discovered Agile and we're doing Agile, and let's wheel in the Scrum Master. And after that 6 months, they said, okay, Agile doesn't really work for what the use case we're trying to achieve. So we're going to do Agile within waterfall, and would sort of draw all of these diagrams of sort of a waterfall, but lots of kind of little Agile squiggles in between. I don't know if it ever quite worked, but I think it is worth asking the question of, are you doing Agile because it is appropriate for your environment, or are you doing it because everyone's doing Agile, and so you also have to do Agile maybe inappropriately? So I agree with you on that piece. But yeah, I totally agree with you. And I mean, this is the major thrust of the conversation that I was lucky enough to have with Giles. And actually, we can put the link in in the show notes, but all of that talk is available online for free. You can watch it in our sort of previous events. But the main theme was that, yes, we're following these processes that we think are agile processes, but they're not serving us. And it's so interesting because, one of the core principles of agile is that it's about, individuals and interactions over processes. And what we've done is we've sort of processized or productized or commoditized what we think are individuals, but they're not. It's just become a process. We've crystallized it in that way. And, we, as you say, we have these kind of scrum masters coming in and they're enforcing sprints like their canon, but it has become a process rather than maintaining the spirit of the individual. So, I mean, for me, what I really enjoyed earlier today in preparation for this conversation was to go back to those principles of Agile, the initial kind of 12 principles from the Agile Manifesto, and to almost pull out some as written in the Holy Book. And to think about what has this become in organizations and how is that separated from the core process. So I want to share a couple with you, David, and I want to see whether these are something that resonate with you in your work. So one is working software is the primary measure of progress, which is that, we could spend absolutely ages planning, but if we're not building anything, then we're not, achieving any impact. But I think where we have lost this, I worked in an organization where they only measured the DORA metrics, which is to do with the kind of the speed and the sort of efficiency with which you're shipping software out of the door. And so we would have these weekly meetings of look at our fantastic DORA metrics and they're all green and they've been green for the whole quarter. And isn't this amazing? But actually there wasn't any thought about what are we building and is it something that's valuable? So you would see these kind of, A star when it comes to particular metrics about getting working software out of the door. But it wasn't partnered with, other elements of the Agile principles, which is, do we have business people in the room? Are we thoughtfully, developing technology that's going to be impactful? I had another one. So at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly. I worked in an organization where historically every 2 weeks, like clockwork, there was a retro and everyone had to submit, 5 tickets and, 3 answers and da-da-da. And it had turned into such a soulless ritual. It was nothing more than a ritual. And everyone would sort of go, well, I don't believe in the retro. I'm not going to put any kind of effort or energy into it because it's just a box checking exercise.
Yeah.
And the team had recognized this and they had switched to almost having like a metaphorical jar of problems. And when someone goes, I spotted something, I think it's not working, you put it in the jar of problems. And when the jar is full enough to have a meaningful conversation about it, then we would sit down and have a conversation. And so people were bought in, they were kind of responding to the opportunity to improve something rather than just saying, well, I'm a child and I've been wheeled into this meeting and feeling really kind of patronized in that sense. So I think for me, that was a great example where it took this concept of there must be a ritual at a particular interval, even if it's not kind of supporting improvement to, okay, well, we get the sort of spirit behind this principle, but we're going to adapt it to our particular environment and we're going to be adults about it. So those were 2 examples that came to my mind. I mean, are these ones that you've come across, or are there any principles from the Agile Manifesto that you've seen almost bastardized a little bit?
Yeah. So funnily enough, the first one, working software is the primary measure of progress, right? I'd actually bastardize that a bit, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I'd actually say slightly pedantically, working software is the primary measure of progress if you're in the technology team building software, right? It's not necessarily the primary measure of progress for your colleagues elsewhere in your organization who are not building the software, right? Because you might build some working software which is not aligned to the customer needs, still works, right? But it's not aligned to the customer needs, and so the customer's not happy. How is that a measure of progress? Right.
Yeah.
So I sometimes think they're a little oversimplistic, right? That's the challenge here. But then that plays on to the point you're making, which is the other manifesto one is at regular intervals, the team reflects on how to become more effective, then tunes and adjusts its behaviors accordingly, right? So it looks as itself, it does its retrospective and stuff like that. But you make a really good point. Yeah, everybody's kind of got over it. We've got fatigue, agile fatigue a little bit. We're like, oh yeah, we get in a room. Fred talks at us for 5 minutes about how brilliant his code is, and then we all go to sleep and blah 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 blah. Right? So, and so I think some of that is like, yeah, but forget that at regular intervals, that's whatever, right? How to become more effective, yeah, fine. Tunes and adjust, yeah, fine. There's 2 things in here that jumped out. The team reflects. This is a team mission, right? The team reflects. And the second thing that stood out to me is behavior. It tunes and adjusts its behavior accordingly, right? This is a behavioral thing, right? This is not about have we got enough tests, automation testing wrapped around our code. This is not about, are we all the best people? Is Fred the best coder in the entire world? Is Sally the best QA person in the entire world? That's not what this is about, right? This is about how the team functions and behaves effectively. Yeah. And I think people have just forgotten that. And so Agile has just become misused, abused. I think, even if you go and look at the 12 manifesto, items, you can just interpret them. You just interpret them differently. I've never seen Agile implemented in the same way anywhere, right? It's always a version of Agile. I mean, I've got into organizations which were not Agile. I've probably done this half a dozen times now and have implemented a product development Agile process. And every single one has been different. So how are people expected to get this right on a manifesto which was written 20 years ago, right? Which, all the people who wrote it are probably rich millionaires retired on an island somewhere now, right? And we're still banging on about it, and we're not taking into the point the fact that I said at the start, which is, environment, or not just physical environment, but what you're producing and all that kind of stuff. I think Agile was a welcome relief when huge, great big year-long projects that cost millions of pounds were just slipping and slipping and slipping. Because, by the way, people had got fatigue about that and forgotten how to do good, proper program and project delivery. So Agile came along and it was like, oh, we can be a bit more this, a bit more like that, and a bit more, just feel our way through it. And, documentation, we don't have to worry about that anymore. I think Agile was just of its moment. And I think for some people, just like waterfall and other, there are other approaches available, right? I think they are suited to different environments, different teams of people, and different ways of working. So you got to work that out first. What will work for you as your organization? I'm currently working for 4 different organizations. 2 of them would claim they are completely agile. One of them would claim it does stuff in an agile way with a lowercase a, and the other one doesn't even know what agile is. So those organizations, but they would all want to be able to work out what they need to do, define it for everybody involved in it, and then do it. And that's common. That's common. That doesn't matter what approach, what methodology you're following. That is absolutely common. So yeah, I don't know. We get a bit hung up on this, don't we?
Yeah, I think it's tricky. I think it all really boils down to use your head. Look at what you're trying to achieve. There are lots of kind of toolkits and things that you can pull out, and you can look at an environment and say, well, actually, okay, well, I think this feels like we can, it might make sense to do something agilely, but let's not, never implement something blindly without having an answer to the question of, hang on, why are we actually doing this? And I think that's where we've gone a little bit wrong with Agile, that we've just sort of said, well, I guess if you have a software company, you also have to have Agile. And we haven't been asking good questions about what does that Agile need to look like, and is it actually appropriate? And so really that for this person, and I wish we had sort of more constructive advice, but I guess if your question is, is it broken? I think it depends how you do it, right? And a good way to fix it is just to sort of look closely at your environment, look at the specific problems. To your point, David, we can be more useful the more we have an understanding of the specific issues you're facing and the specific solutions that might support them. But, there's no one Agile, as you've said. So it's not necessarily broken. It's just, is it suitable for what you're trying to achieve in your current environment? And if it's not, how can you sort of shift or shape it or replace it if necessary to find what the suitable thing is?
Yeah, exactly. Horses for courses, Sophie, just like I said at the
Horses
start.
for courses. Can I, and this will get cut, but do you know the format of an I'm in business joke?
No.
Okay, so I'll be really quick. So the way that the joke goes is I would come to you and say, I'm in business. Your job is to say, what's your business? And then I say what the business is. And your job is to say, how's it going? And then I give a pun. So do you want to have a go? Okay.
Yeah, go on.
Hi, David. I'm in business.
Hi, Sophie. What is your business?
Equine education.
Oh,
And you say, how's it going?
How's it going?
No. How's it going? It's courses for horses. But I have better ones.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. We won't cut it, Sophie, but we might need to take out my sort of lackluster responses.
Yeah. Anyway, that was a great chat. And thank you again for writing in. If you do have a disaster diary, please do send it to us. You can send it, you can message David or myself on LinkedIn, or you can email us at partner@londontechleaders.io. We will always do our best to help you with our hopefully slightly coherent ramblings.
Yeah. Thank you, Sophie. I think that was a good conversation. We covered some good news. We had a nice chat about when to dive in and when to hang back and let your team deal with the details. I think that we came to a sort of happy balance there, and the same with Agile, right? We decided that it's probably not broken, to answer our listeners' question. And I don't know if we've lost our way or we've just lost the art of when to apply it and when not to apply it. So, work to be done there across the industry. I'm sure lots of people have thoughts on that. We've talked about social media, and we talked at the top of the podcast about some events we've got coming up, which we hope to see you at in the not too distant future. But for now, Sophie, I hope you have a fantastic week, and we'll talk again next week.
Yeah, we'll talk again next week. And in the meantime, don't forget to like, follow, subscribe, press all of the buttons, check all of the boxes. It really helps us to keep going and to bring you our insights, hopefully insightful insights on what's happening in tech, what it means to work in tech, what it means to be a CTO. We love doing it, and we hope you enjoy it. So please do press those buttons.